What's up, folks? How we doing? Thanks for checking out the video. In this one, we're going to use this Tartar farm and ranch equipment trough, and we're going to turn this into a raised tomato bed. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to line the bottom with this permeated fabric here, and I need to pop some holes or drill some holes around the outside so that the water can drain out at. And this whole trough here is going to fit right here. And as you can see, we've got this post and this post with wires up. I've got nails in the wires as tensioners, right? You just twist them and it'll tension up the wire. But these wires are what's going to hold up the tomatoes. They're going to grow out of the trough down here at the base. So that's what we're working on today. All right, first thing you want to do with an above ground planter like this trough is make sure there's good drainage. So I've gone in and used a hammer and nail and knocked a hole like this right here and spread it out all over the bottom, right? That way the water can drain through. And then came back through with my drill and drilled out these. That's the one from the nail. That's the one from the drill. And if you just nail it like that, you got a chance of stuff clogging these holes up. So just make sure you get your holes big enough and lots of holes. And that's gonna keep your root system healthy and make sure that you get delicious tomatoes all the way through the season. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take some of this gardening cloth right here, and this is gonna keep some insects and foreign invaders from getting in through the bottom of the trough and keep our soil healthier longer. So we're just going to cut this out in sheets and lay it over the bottom of the trough. All right, so we've got our drainage holes drilled, and we've got our permeable ground cloth taped in to the trough. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put it in place, and we're going to put a layer of peat moss down right on top, and then we'll put our potting soil on top of that. All right, we've got the new raised bed in place. We've got the permeable layer on, and I've got it raised up just a little bit by bricks. And as you can see, there's these lines here where the tomatoes are going to come up on. Now, first thing we want to do is put about 3 or 4 inch layer of some peat moss at the bottom of the trough, and then we're going to mix a little bit of the peat moss with our potting mix and fill it up the rest of the way. And the reason for so many holes in the permeable layer and the peat moss and elevating it off the ground is because we want the water to be able to flow through the trough but not pool up in the trough, right? Like a lot of the dirt I have here is Georgia red clay, right? So if I were to put it on the ground and that were to sink in over time, it could actually create a seal that doesn't allow it to drain. And I need to grow good tomatoes, happy tomatoes all season long. I need good drainage. So I'm raising it up off the ground just a little bit, just to create a bit of an air layer, putting in that peat moss, which is also great for drainage at the bottom. And then we'll mix the peat moss in with the potting mix. And that's gonna make it drain awesome. All those holes elevated from the ground and with good drainage potting soil. And these should be very, very happy tomatoes this season. All right, now that we got a couple inches of peat moss in there for drainage and as a kind of a base layer, now I'm gonna start adding in the potting mix. All right, so we've got our layer of peat moss on the bottom, potting mix kind of in the middle. We're gonna put a little bit more peat moss in there and mix it up. And then we're gonna add more soil. Ready to go. We got filled and drilled ready to go. It is time to plant some tomatoes. Marley agrees. Marley, do you agree? All right, so it is time to plant our little tomato trough. We've got our holes drilled, we've got our trough filled, and it's elevated off the ground just a little bit. And that's just to help with the drainage and to kind of help keep pests out of it as well too. I'm sure I'll have some pests move in, but I've taken some precautions. There's a permeable fabric in the bottom. It's going to help that for the first season until I have to replant it next year. But this is one of those replanting small container gardens. As you can see, I've got tomatoes here. The two on the outside are red beefsteak, and these four are better boys. Now, both of these types of tomatoes are indeterminate, which means after about 90 days, they're gonna start cranking out tomatoes, and they're not gonna stop cranking out tomatoes unless they run out of food or it freezes. So I've left a little bit of room here in the trough because once I get them planted, watered, and everything kind of settles a little bit, I'll come in again and put more soil on top and basically just fill this guy up with soil this season. That way the soil will feed the plants, but I'll also come in and fertilize them as well too. But between these four better boys and these two red beefsteaks, this little garden setup is going to crank out some tomatoes. And I often grow more tomatoes than I'm actually going to eat. And that's probably going to be the case with this little trough as well too. But I think it's going to look good. And that's another thing about tomatoes. It's hard to get them to look good in a garden, right? You've got all this hardware and trellises and tomato cages, and they're viney and that sort of thing. So we're trying to make them look good here. I've got this post and then wires on this post. Now grapevines are way over there and they'll kind of grow around, but they won't really grow around this far this year. So all the way up right here will be tomatoes. And hopefully they'll do fine on these little wires I've got stretched. So that's what's going on. So let's get our hands dirty and let's get these tomatoes in the ground. All right, we've got our little above ground tomato planter planted and ready to go. We're gonna let them grow for a little bit, and then we'll add some more soil once they start to get tall and viney. But better boy over here and red beefsteak, those two over here. And yeah, I get it. I know they're like compact and like packed into this little container, but like I said, that's okay. They're gonna grow up and into the wires. I'm gonna add more potting soil in about a month or so as they grow up, and I'll fill to the rim, and I'll be fertilizing as needed. So yeah, they're gonna be in close proximity and all over each other. But as long as I keep feeding them and they stay healthy, they're gonna keep producing tomatoes. And both of these varieties, the Better Boy and the beefsteak, are all indeterminate, which means they're not a one and done plant. Once they get to that 90-day mark and they start producing fruits, they're gonna keep producing tomatoes until they die, run out of food, or it freezes. And that's why this type of tomato is very popular in gardens, around my area at least. But there we go. We will give you updates on this little trough garden as it grows. But right now, all we really need to do is water it and go work on other things for a few months.